Okay, let's continue. We now look at example number 1 under mathematical models of linear programming. So we have this example on the board where we are told that Menda intends to run a business of selling mineral water. He needs to order at least 10 small bottles and at most 60 large bottles. He decides to order at most 80 bottles of water altogether. And the number of large bottles he orders should be at least twice that of small bottles. Given that X is the number of small bottles and Y the number of large bottles, write 4 inequalities which represent these conditions. So we need to write 4 inequalities equivalent to the conditions that are given. So as you can see, we are able to see the phrases or the terms that are used to mean specific inequality signs. There are some terms that we discussed earlier in the last video that we did, which means specific inequalities that we mentioned also. For example, you can see the first inequality will come from this. Menda intends to run a business of selling mineral water. And we are told that X small bottles, Y large bottles. So Menda intends to run a business of selling mineral water. He needs to order at least 10 small bottles. So you can see this is statement here. At least 10 small bottles. Small bottles are X. Then at least means greater than or equal to. So at least 10 small bottles are X. So the inequality that we shall generate from there will be small bottles is X. Then at least greater than or equal to then 10. So this will be our first inequality. So at least 10 small bottles. From that statement there, we have generated X greater than or equal to 10. At least means greater than or equal to small bottles X, then there's this 10. So from this statement, we have come up with this first inequality. So the second inequality will come from the next statement also, as we can see. He needs to order at least 10 small bottles. We have this inequality. And at most 60 large bottles. From this statement also, at most 60 large bottles. Large bottles are Y. At most also means this is the maximum. So at most also means less or equal to. At most means less or equal to. So at most 60. So at most is less or equal to. Large bottles is Y. So at most less or equal to. Then we have 60. So large bottles, the large bottles should be at most 60. So this is our second inequality. At most 60 large bottles. Large bottles is Y, and large bottles is Y, and at most is less or equal to the 60. So that is where the second inequality will come from. Okay, the next inequality, he decides to order at most 80 bottles of water altogether. Again, we shall generate an inequality from here. At most, again we have less or equal to 80 bottles of water altogether. Altogether, meaning that when you sum the small bottles and the large bottles that he intends to order, we should not go beyond the 80. So from this statement, at most 80 bottles of water altogether, we have, from altogether, we have X, the small bottles plus the large bottles. This is what altogether means. At most 80. At most means that is the maximum, less or equal to 80. So this is our third inequality. Then our last inequality will come from where? And the number of large bottles holders should be, yes, the fourth will come from here. And the number of large bottles holders should be at least twice that of small bottles. So from that statement, we shall come up with the fourth and last inequality. Number of large bottles. Large bottles is y. So we start. Large bottles holders should be at least. At least means greater or equal to twice to that of small bottles. Small bottles is x. So our last inequality is y is greater than or equal to 2x. Coming from this statement here, the number of large bottles holders should be at least twice that of small bottles. Number of large bottles, y, at least greater than or equal to twice to small bottles, x. So basically, these are what we call mathematical models. These inequalities that we have come up with are what we call mathematical models, which are generated from the conditions that we are given. So the condition in this case was this statement about Menda intending to run a business of selling mineral water. Thank you for your attention.